So first, what is Microsoft Fabric? We're going to cover 4 areas. And these are factors that distinguish Fabric from most other platforms. It is, first of all, a complete analytics platform. It is Lake-centric, it is open, and it empowers every business user. And it also implements persistent security and governance out of the box. So let's start with the first one. And this, in our opinion, is a key differentiating feature. It is a complete analytics platform. In the past, this is how a typical implementation of a data warehouse used to look like. Multiple subsystems, multiple vendors, multiple data formats, multiple skill sets required, multiple computing frameworks, from Spark to SQL. So this took a lot of effort and time to integrate. So projects that dealt with data warehousing or data integration would last months, if not years. It turns out that all these processes have common patterns. There's a data integration that we start with where we need to bring in data from various systems. Then we need to transform that data using various tools, using data engineering. We need to store that data into a data warehouse or a data lakehouse. We need to complement batch data, sometimes with live streaming data. And we want to be able to use that data for data science and machine learning projects. We also want to be able to use that data for reporting, for business insights, for actionable insights. So those are usually common. And ideally, they should all reside on a common infrastructure, on a common data lake, and use common governance and administration tools. It turns out that Microsoft has these tools, whether we're talking about Power BI or Azure Synapse, Azure AI, Custo, Azure Data Factory, Purview for governance. But they're still not integrated. It still takes time and expertise. There are many products, there are different user experiences, dedicated and serverless infrastructures, and it's not always trivial to transition between the two. Platform as a service, software as a service. Most of the time there's steep learning curve to master all these tools. And therefore, there's a high integration effort. Microsoft Fabric is the platform that unifies all those tools. So it integrates the Azure Data Factory, Synapse Data Engineering, Synapse Data Science, Synapse Data Warehousing, Real-Time Analytics, Power BI, and Data Activator. And these components have been around, with the exception of Data Activator, for years. Power BI, introduced back in 2015, Azure Data Factory, probably about 5 or 7 years ago, Synapse, back in 2018. So they existed before, but they needed to be integrated. And also, they needed to leverage the data in one data repository, which is OneLake. So I would say that probably the key theme for Microsoft Fabric is the fact that it is a unified data platform. And going back to themes, not only it is a unified data platform, but it covers the entire life cycle of a data and analytics project. So it is an end-to-end analytics from the data lake to the business user, which is, again, a big advantage. And it also allows organizations to move with agility from the point of integrating and ingesting their data in a central place to the point where a business user can use self-service tools like Power BI or Data Activator to get the insights in that data. So as I was saying before, I will go over this 4 key areas. not only Fabric integrates the tools at the top, but it also integrates down to OneLake. So there's a single data repository. The security model goes across all the workloads. The computing capacities go across all the workloads and the models. There's shared workspaces. There's single sign-on. There is a consistent user interface. There's a very simple workspace organization, and the collaboration experience is enhanced. The storage format is unique, as I will get into more detail later in the presentation. The data is copied for all engines, so we don't have a copy of the data for Spark and another copy of the data for SQL. There is a single data copy that both engines and more can leverage. There is a monitoring hub that applies to all workloads. There's a data hub that can be leveraged by all workloads, and security, governance, and compliance is built across Fabric. Another aspect that sometimes is neglected is different user personas have consistent user interfaces. It is very easy to move from a data analyst using Power BI to a data scientist using a machine learning model. All you have to do, and we'll show that in the demo, we can show that. There's a small icon in the bottom left corner of the interface that allows you to move between Power BI, Azure Data Factory, Azure Machine Learning, telemetry application, and the interface is very similar. The only thing that changes are the items that appear. This is very different from years past, where a data engineer would use a specific tool, very different interface from a database administrator, from a business intelligence developer. With Fabric, this interface is consistent, and it's essentially a web URL. All the experiences are SaaS or software as a service experiences. The second area is, and key differentiator, is the fact that Fabric is Lake-centric. And we hear many times that customers are building a data lake. Why is that important? Well, for a few reasons. First of all, the data is in a single place. With OneLake, think about OneLake as being the OneDrive for data. It's provisioned automatically when Fabric is provisioned. All workloads store their data in the same OneLake repository. Data is organized in an intuitive hierarchical namespace, and you can label that data for governance and security purposes with discovery, with Microsoft Information Protection labels. Lineage information is automatically generated. Personally identifiable information is scanned. So security and governance is built into this intelligent data foundation. The second component that is not often realized, an advantage of OneLake, is that we're using multiple computing engines. In the second layer here, you see a Spark engine that allows PySpark notebooks to run. We have a T-SQL engine for transactional data. We have a Custo query language, or KQL, for telemetry data. And we can also have analysis service as another computing engine. All these computing engines seamlessly, without any transition, use the same OneLake data, whether that's finance or customer data or service telemetry or business KPIs. All that data is stored in the same unique data format, which is Delta Parquet. which is an open standards format, is not a Microsoft standard, but it offers specific advantages in compression and performance. And once the data is stored in the data lake, it is directly accessible by all the engines without any import or export. So you can run a Spark SQL in a notebook without having to change anything. You would just run that SQL code in a Spark notebook. And all the engines have been optimized to work with Delta Parquet. And again, this is important because before, data warehouses used to have proprietary data formats. So SQL, as good as it is, it is a proprietary format. With Delta Parquet, that changes, and this offers performance, compression, and interoperability advantages. Another new concept that Fabric introduces is the concept of shortcuts. With shortcuts, you are not copying data from other Azure repositories, as shown here. You are not copying data from Amazon lakes. You're not copying data from Google. You're simply shortcutting them. So instead of duplicating, it's just accessing the data via shortcuts. So that allows instant linking of data that already exists, and the shortcuts make OneLake the first multi-cloud data lake. Also, OneLake data can be directly accessed through APIs by third-party applications or services. I will not spend too much time here because these are known aspects. The fact that Power BI integrates with most applications that the business users would use. It integrates with Office, with Teams. You don't have to access Teams, for example, to run Power BI reports. You don't have to access PowerPoint to run Power BI reports. You can integrate reports in Power BI, and they can be dynamic. They can be live connected to the data source. So if the data changes, the PowerPoint slide will reflect that. They can be easily integrated into Outlook. So the integration with the Office suite of products in use by business users has been around through Power BI. What comes with Fabric is that the integration goes to the data level. So any security that's implemented in OneLake, it's transmitted through any applications that use it. So you don't have to change anything. That data security is enforced in OneLake. What is new is Data Activator, and that is a alerting application that allows to implement models and rules and triggers so that when certain patterns are detected or certain thresholds are exceeded, alerts are sent through Teams, through Outlook, workflows can be triggered through Power Automate, or custom actions can be taken to intervene directly in the health of those systems. The Data Activator is a new component of Fabric. Security and governance, again, we could spend probably a few hours, if not days, on security and governance. I would just summarize it on two planes, as we call them. The control plane, which means essentially you can assign permissions at the workspace level. So you can have administrators or members or contributors or viewers that only have that specific access to that particular workspace. You can further define that at the report level or at the semantic model level by sharing. So somebody who has access to the workspace or doesn't have access to the workspace can have access to a specific report. So for example, executives don't necessarily need to have access to the entire workspace. They need to have their executive reports, and they can be granted permissions directly to that particular report. The same applies, for example, for different personas, different roles. Business analysts may not need to have access directly to a semantic model. They may only need access to specific reports, so that can be separated as well. There's a second plane, which is the data plane, which implements row level security, column level security, object level security, and that can be implemented at the data source level, and it is transcended through the boards and fabric